So I start fall classes in a little more than a week. And that got me thinking about how I used to have really bad test anxiety. I don't really take tests anymore. I'm now doing the more humanities and social sciences part of my major. The classes that I take, usually there's not really a good way to quantify what you've been learning. So our final exams are usually just projects or presentations, which is a whole nother thing for me. But before, when I had the actual test that I had to take, I would get really nervous during the test, and then I would have a panic attack and then just start crying in the middle of the test. It would be really embarrassing because I would be trying not to make a lot of noise, but it was just really hard to hold back. So usually by the end of class, the sleeves of my sweater would be soaked with tears that I was trying to wipe away. And then I would just start worrying that I would start crying during the middle of a test. And then that would make me even more nervous to take the test. And therefore it would be even more likely that I would have a panic attack while taking tests. So beforehand I would get really nervous that I was never quite prepared for the test. Because in my mind, if I wasn't totally prepared for every question that they could ask me, then there was a possibility that I might start crying during the test. And then that worry would just escalate and make me even more worried. But what I found really helpful is telling myself over and over that it doesn't really matter how well I do on a test or just in the class in general. Once you graduated from college and you apply for jobs, it's not like anyone's gonna ask you what your GPA was. All they're gonna wanna know is, do you have the degree or not? So I just try to tell myself that I've studied enough to get a decent grade on this test, so I don't need to stress myself out and study until I get an A+. Because I know that no matter how much I study for tests, I'll always feel underprepared and that I need to study more. So yeah, I'm not really all that good at it yet, but I think I'm getting better at it. Like this time last year, I would have been so worried about how I would do on a test or in a particular class that I would spend all my free time worrying about it. And I don't think I would even study that much. Most of my study time was dedicated to worrying about how much I needed to study in order to do well. There was very little actual studying going on. Another thing that I have found to be helpful is that because of my disability, I am allowed to take tests in the Disability Testing Center, which is basically a quiet room where there's not usually a lot of other students. And even if there are, you have no idea what grade they're in or what class they're taking a test for. Because I find part of my anxiety to be just the noise from the paper flipping and people's pencils on the paper. It just makes me feel that I'm falling behind and that other people understand this material better than I do, which doesn't help because that worrying just keeps me from being able to take the test, so I just fall even farther behind. So if you find that to be a problem for you, then the Disability Center might be helpful. I'm pretty sure most schools do count anxiety as a reason for having to use the Disability Testing Center. But you have to go through all these different forms first, including one that the doctor has to sign to certify that you've been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. So, kind of a long process, but it might be worth it if that's really problematic for you. So, anyway, that was just my experience with anxiety during testing and some of the things that I do to help me with it.